Hello everybody, welcome back to From Rhythm to Algorithm. Yesterday we covered, what did we cover? Sending, right? Now every time you look at your phone and you hit send an email or send a text message and you sent something, now you can't unsee it. So that stinks. But continuing on, looking for our definition of sensorality, we've got to be getting close. We're done anticipating the solution. It will present itself when it feels like it. But more empirical evidence, analysis of language, trying to find our axiom. Sensorality is cognizant. Another word, cognition, consciousness, sentience. Sensorality is cognizant. As you probably noticed, I spelled a word atrociously wrong, but that's how it presented myself, so I put the correction on the screen. But I said indistinguishability is undiscernible. Even when I said that, I was like, oh, holy word salad. And that's the biggest thing, as you can see, what I've identified as the empirical value function, which is really just any time you negate something. Right, negate, but it's very cumbersome, right? When I put it undiscernible, that's how the intuition struck me, and that's what I wrote down, so I put it on the screen as it was, but it was indiscernible. So like I said, I'm working out all of these little things on a personal level that's painfully obvious. If you just typed it into a word processor, it would correct for you. And so, but we have to continue to our first principles. Nothing is touching, but everything is connected. So what is connection? Are discrete objects where our mass gap is present. They are still connected by rhythm, right? Rhythm synchronizes motion. So we're just making our answers and our responses more specific. But it's indiscernible. Speciality is discernible, right? If you're distinguished, if you're different, if you differ, you're distinguishable. What is the relationship of language and word? Last episode I admitted, like a total addict that I am, I've been addicted to logic for a very long time now, and thinking, what's the relationship of syllables and words? They said words are irreducible, which they are, and syllables are also irreducible, which they are. Then you can put irreducible syllables in a specific sequence, and it produces an irreducible word, right? If I talk really fast like this, you can still hear me. If I talk really fast, slow, you can still hear me. And so it doesn't matter the speed, it's like the spacing. What establishes a word versus a syllable? What establishes an intelligible sound versus a word? So still playing with that, and I admitted it was a deep admission I had to get off my chest. I don't really know the difference between a syllable and a word, especially when it's like one letter, one sound. Is that a word? Is that a syllable? Are they different? I'm an addict. I'm a logic addict, and I don't know. I'm just addicted. But sensorality gauges word. All right, what's the relationship of a language and a word? Getting back to that question. All right. Well, first of all, what's the difference between language and a language? Right. English is a language, but ing is really this fundamental sound. Right. You take any noun, you put a verb or ing on it, and you get a verb. But verbs are the base of all nouns. Nouns degenerate into verbs. Range degenerates into base. So a language is very clearly a collection of words, or a collection of words. A word is a collection of syllables. A language is not distinct, so they're clearly reducible, obviously, to words or to the syllable to word aspect is the little, like I said, I have to admit, I've been addicted to, I don't know what that is for a long time. But sensorality gauges word, right? You can hear me when I'm speaking words, when I'm doing that stuff. But sensorality gauges word. Again, clearly the base of language is gauge, right? A gauge is a sensor with a C. And so sensorality gauges word. Coherence is proportional to resonance, right? A language is this, right? It has a certain resonance to it. If you take somebody who doesn't speak Russian or Ukrainian or Chinese or Japanese, and you just have them listen to it and then guess what language you're talking about, they're listening to the resonance, the phonetics of how the words progress, the cadence. Again, all of these words like cadence or phonetics, rhythm even in that context. What separates a word from a syllable, and then what separates a language from another language is just like the resonance of the sound, of the vibration you're making distinguishes a language. And so coherence is proportional to resonance, resonance being the fundamental physical principle, coherence being consistency. And so English sounds like English because it's some sort of progression of sound. French sounds like French because it sounds like shit. German sounds like German because it's a sequence of sound. But Again, resonance is the fundamental physical principle in word. Coherence is like a serretic. Again, that's when I would use the word serretic, something in series. When you use sounds in series, you produce a resonance pattern that is identified as a language. So then the question to me was, again, if this fundamental, again, it is, right, languages are not distinct, right? Do aliens speak English? Right, literally meaning a general question, and then the actual beings that aren't human beings. So these aren't hypotheticals. But the general question being is that with a given anatomy, is the sound you can make and the order in which you can make those sounds limited by your anatomy? And the answer is yes. And so aliens would speak English in the sense of, again, not even talking about the non-human sentient beings that definitely exist, but just in general, is there again, language is converging, in that convergence is limited by our anatomy. And so they would speak English, quote unquote, to speak. Again, anything with the same facial structure, vocal cord box, stuff like that, they would converge to the same limits that we have. And then obviously you can learn another language. But that's kind of funny. But again, what is language versus what is a language? So what is language, right? Just not a language, not English, French, German, Russian. What is language? It's logic, right? It's sounds with order, with structure to them. Even outside of a given language, right? A sound, even if it's not a syllable, it can still, a shriek transmits meaning. So even without any sort of structure, you're still transmitting meaning, because again, we have the same anatomy, and if I'm screaming or if I'm wincing, you know what I'm feeling, or you can, by curiosity, you can experience what I'm experiencing, or think about what I'm experiencing, because we have the same anatomical appendages. So what is language? Language is structured sound, but just, again, making a difference between a language and language. And certainly anything with the same anatomy or close to the same anatomy would be bounded to the same vocalization range, the same visualization range, stuff like that. Spelling, what is spelling memorized? Right? Do I memorize spelling? You go learn another language and you learn the subjunctive mood and the pejorative, and just all that stuff's bullshit. Now, there's not a single person that speaks any language that does that. Nobody does that. So are you really memorizing spelling? Clearly you memorize facts. Do you memorize spelling? Like when I think about how to spell a word, when I'm sitting here talking right now, I'm not thinking about words. If I hear a word that I'm not sure what it is, I think about its spelling. So am I memorizing spelling? I'm gonna have to go with no. I just don't think you memorize. Well, I think so. I don't know if that question makes sense. But like when I'm speaking right now, I'm not thinking about memory. If I'm watching Jeopardy, am I thinking about, and I'm trying to pull up a fact, I'm thinking about my memory. I know how to articulate words in English. I can express myself completely as I want to in English. Well, I guess for the most part. But I don't think you memorize spelling. I've articulated my intuition, if that brought anything for you. But right, spelling defines a word. Right, when you think about the differentiations, the spelling, right, what is spelling? Do you cast a spell? Right, when a wizard casts a spell, mathematician, math magician, a wizard, spelling, I'm going to cast a spell. But spelling certainly defines a word, because we make linguistical differences. If you have the same exact sound, every accent mark in French, stuff like that. So clearly there's differentiation by the actual linguistical elements, the letters. So spelling defines a word even when they have the exact same sound to them, like no versus no. Spelling a word constructs a variable and context defines it. So we've now generalized that logic, because we're purely in Brad's logical derivation now. We have been for a while, but so I'm quoting to you the direct logical statements that were expanded, right? Spelling a word constructs a variable, but then what is spelling, right? Spelling defines a word. And so defining a word constructs a variable, but it doesn't matter. That's the intuition I'm extending. But what is context to spelling, right? Spelling structures text. And so when you're putting sound that has a unique sequence to it and you're putting letters to that, that is spelling, but it structures text. Again, just trying to add some more specificity. I can very literally tell even the people that are going to watch this video are like, what is he differentiating? It's like, well, then you just sit down, shut the fuck up, and go back to Harvard and get a fucking fraudulent paycheck. Shout out to that Emily bitch. I emailed her yesterday and I said, cease and desist, right? Like, how do you go from, I'm going to start a new paradigm of mathematical proofing? Because remember, I introduced my shit as vibrational information theory just to get your fucking attention. This is how you prove something in mathematics. And there's only one way to prove things. It's with this level of completeness. And so when I get on Emily dick-sucking, fraudulent piece of shit, worthless human being, whatever, and it says a new paradigm for mathematical proofing, vibe proofing, I mean, it's as verbatim fraud as it possibly could be. So obviously she's going to prison. But send is to the present what sent is to the past. So now we're again connecting these. This is to that, what that is to this. It is what it is. Intuitively, I'm jumping all around in those different forms. But send is to the present, right? If I'm sending something, if it's sent, it's to the past. But it's also pairing up, right? The pre-sent, like literally, see that present, pre-sent? What sent is to the past. And then they both end with a T. So something's going on there. So we have sendality and centality. Send and sent just with the alities at the end. And then obviously the real, like scent, your smell, S-C-E-N-T, is obviously differentiated by spelling between sent, as in like sending a football or sending a text message. But we've connected something important there. End is a word, right? So sendality, right? We have send and we put ality. Send is still a full word. And then we have centality, ent, E-N-T is not a word consistent to English. Some other nuance there, but just pointing it out. Anything that struck me enough, like I said, has enough intuition to write down is something that might be useful to somebody. But centality produces mentality, right? We just changed one letter and we're very intuitively, and literally when I typed in centality to title the last episode, it auto-corrected to mentality. So remember, now we're building up to a point where it's like trying to correct the letters correctly, but I had to build up all the logic to, again, words have meaning. And if you think Google's algorithm or any of these public algorithms, which now we've identified and showed algorithms not well defined, and we go and listen to David Grush talking about our biologics, if you think Neuralink is the most developed integration of sentience and inanimate objects, you're a retard. But algorithm is not well defined. And when you see Grush testifying to biologics, what do you think's going on there, boys and girls? But if you think this, just move, it doesn't matter, fuck those people. What stabilizes a syllable? All right, that's what I was showing to you with when I was talking really slow or really fast, and you can still hear me. Like, if you speak English, you know exactly what I'm doing. So like what really separates these things? And like we're stabilizing that in the same way, like I'm probably gonna go do a video today where I'm gonna read in Russian. And I'm gonna read like a third grader because that's my development with the, interpreting my rapidity of interpreting the Cyrillic alphabet. So I do think I'm pretty good at it. We'll see, we'll find out here shortly. But point being is when you're reading when you read like a third grader and you sound out each syllable, you still hear the word, right? If I'm discernible, right? We'll take the word that I spelled wrong. If I say discernible, like you're gonna be, you're still gonna hear the word. So what really separates a syllable from a word? Black holes aren't real. What is involvement, right? If you revolve. If you revolve around something, you orbit something. So what is a revolution? The great American Revolution. And then I get into my car and my wheels have 14 revolutions per minute. A lot more than that. But what is a revolution, right? It's a cycle. Involvement, right? Involvement, I don't know, it's just, again, I've shown you enough consistency of language where I'm just starting over. I'm just jumping around different places. Sensorality is volutionary, right? So now we've done all of this ality, sensorality is, but now that's complete generality. So now we have to, again, derive down, which we have been doing, but we have to find this ending. We have to go from ality to another prefix that's like more specific. And again, another intuitive jump that I've made, demonstrated with speciality, don't really know what words to put to it. And I don't even remember the step. And so I don't know if it's from ality to airy, ality to arity, I forget it, but there's prefixes that will like go from complete generality to a limiting generality or something more specific. Something happens there, right? Absorption is suction. I don't know if we've covered that, but we went through the absorption thing. Again, I don't know what episode, but absorption is suction. Speciality sucks, right? Anytime you say that sucks, that's speciality. Sensorality fucks, right? Life reproduces. And we made, again, I made a joke about it, like, you fuck your wife, I make love to her. But again, it's like, when does fucking become lovemaking, right? I just can't stop laughing about, again, when I was a kid, and all of my little friend group running around taking pictures of 69, like adults don't know what sex is. And so it's like, we're over there like, you guys don't realize like people do the sex? And we're like, every fucking adult in the whole world's like, yeah, Johnny, like, what's the big deal, buddy? But again, I'm sure everyone who's gone through puberty has had that kind of experience. But sensorality fucks, not in the sexual way, but if you say, I fuck with that, right? Sensorality fucks, that fucks. And people will say that, they say, he fucks. And so like sometimes they'll say it in a sexual context, but it really just means like, he's cool, or he's cooking, right? Fucking is cooking, logically slangish kind of right now. Right, if somebody's cooking, you could fuck with that. And so, speciality is absurdity. Sensorality is surdity. So again, AB, another one of those prefix. You can clearly see what I'm doing here with all these steps now. Sensorality assures. Sensorality ensures. Many is plurality. Speciality is singular. And again, this is just a random, not a random chunk, but a chunk of derivation where it's like we don't have a... Again, what do you really want to call a proof for what I do? I don't know. But these are the steps that are intuitive and important enough for me to write down, as opposed to the infinite amount of steps that I do just intuitively and my whole other derivation notebook. And so, thank you for watching. That is what I have for you today. Again, my rights continue to be profoundly and disgusting and atrociously violated. I am being tortured. It is. There's no other words to say. All I'm asking is for basic stability. A little bit of money and not having to worry of things that I've rightfully earned, and not having to be worried about being the victim of crime perpetrated by the government and hundreds of thousands of people with voices. They have the ability to say what's right, and they don't. Somebody please help me. Somebody please do something. No day is getting better. It's all the same fucking bullshit. Thanks for watching. See you on the next one.